Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Reality Bites, our bite-sized version of our regular podcast, Reality Hub, where we may not go for as long as our long-format podcast, but we still try to dive deep and try to explore a topic. And hopefully, whichever topic that, we talk about on this episode, it provides some value and offers some sort of opportunity for you to consider and explore and go deeper into yourself. So I'm going to kick things off with mental health or mental well-being. Now, I'm a huge proponent of total well-being. So on every dimension, on every plane. So we're talking about the physical, we're talking about the mental, we're talking about the spiritual, we're talking about the emotional, all these different bodies that we as a human being experience. It's so important to nurture and honor and sustain and to look after and to evolve and grow and explore, etc. But mental well-being is such a huge topic, isn't it? We all know someone that suffers from some form of mental suffering and pain, and we can also turn the arrows towards ourselves and actually go deeper into our own mental world and realize that we too obviously have aspects of our mental makeup that causes pain and suffering. So the mental dis-ease, the mental suffering is so widespread in every area of our community, and of course, not just in our community, but also on a global stage. And speaking of the global stage, it's fascinating that we're at a time now where it seems where everything is really ramping up or reaching a crescendo or a tipping or boiling point, if you like, as we navigate these turbulent times. And, as we're bombarded by all these events that are playing out on the world stage, that are perpetuated by the media and infiltrating our minds, it's no wonder that we suffer more and more from the stress of mental anguish and pain. And you could even relate that completely or derive that what's causing that is fear. Right, so you think of the fight or flight, or freeze or fawn. When your nervous system, when you're in that overwhelm, this constant state of overwhelm, which seems to be the norm, is in the long term not healthy and obviously causes a great deal of pain and suffering and even illness and dis-ease. So what I want to explore is, with all these huge dramas and conflicts playing out, how can we navigate that? How can we protect ourselves, armor ourselves, or even transcend, I think is probably a better way of looking at it, through these times where it feels like there is just so much constant pressure, not just from the outside world, but also with the internal world, which may just be a reflection of what's happening externally. So, as these huge dramas are playing out across the world, whether it's war or conflict or division or anger or hate or separation, it's all symptomatic of what I would call a trauma. And I know that George Kavassilis always talks about the fear-based trauma mind control, which in a way it is, and that's just a whole nother topic. But I would ask you, when you tune into the drama and the conflict out there, which if you intentionally do, or it just comes to you through speaking with friends or family, how does that sit? How does that feel? What are the feelings, the sensations, the thoughts that arise when you tune in to, say, whatever it is, a conflict, a global catastrophe, try to have that awareness and witness and observe how you actually feel in that moment. And then maybe you'll get a better understanding of what maybe those triggers are, or at least you'll know what the sensations, the feelings are, and then you can explore deeper as to, well, what's the root of that? Where is that coming from? Is that just a recycled belief system? Is that something I need to address further and investigate further? Is this possibly my own trauma and wounding that is coming up to show itself, to be revealed and ultimately to be integrated and healed and transcended? So as you know, those people, and I assert that everyone that's listening to this podcast or our Reality Hub episodes, you're all on your own path of awakening personal growth. And part of that spiritual growth and personal development, or however you want to frame it, inevitably you're going to have to address your shadow selves, the wounds and traumas that perhaps you've suppressed and put aside. And ultimately, call it karma, which is just another word for experience of the past, will need to be addressed, healed, integrated, in order to what I call coming back into holiness. So I use the word holiness, and I'm not too sure if this is anything new or it's just, but it's sort of, I think it's a really nice interpretation to use the word holy, not so much in the religious context, but in the context of wholeness, whole, and holiness coming back to your own divinity, to your own source, to your own power, to your own authentic, true self. So yeah, I wanted to discuss this topic of coming back into holiness, which, as Ram Dass said so eloquently, is we're all just walking each other home. So for me, holiness or wholeness is living wholeheartedly and coming back to you, to home. And I truly believe that, yeah, it's the greatest journey that anyone can take in their lifetime, is to journey back home to self, to love. As I've mentioned in a previous podcast, in the hero's journey, we're all called to adventure from what is known into what is unknown, to seek beyond ourselves, which you could even look at journeying into the shadow aspects or doing the shadow work as being going beyond yourself or your known self into that area or dimension to shine a light onto those wounds and traumas that, as I say, you've pushed aside or orphaned out as a part of you, which needs to come back and be reintegrated so that you don't feel so separate and fragmented in your own beingness. And ultimately, our return back to home or holiness is ourselves finally finding who we've been looking for all along. It's that return back to our divine nature, our formless selves, our spirit, our soul, that part of ourselves that is beyond our ego and identity, which we reinforce and believe so strongly that that's who we really are. But of course, the human experience is a continual process of change, and there are different versions of yourself. So your ego identity can never be your true self when you go beyond that. And it reminds me of that saying that the hardest journey one can ever take is from your head to your heart. So in the mental realm, in the consciousness realm, where we create this identity or egoic structure, if you like, that often can be so divided or disconnected, I think is the word I'm looking for, from what your heart center actually is asking of you and wanting to guide you, and knows the truth of who you really are. Now, obviously we need the ego, and we construct and curate our egoic identities to cope and manage and survive in a world, because that's the way it's structured, to survive in a way that we feel like we fit in on so many levels. And they're all just labels that we create, which humans create in order for society to function, I guess. But we can become prisoners of our own mind, and when those egoic identity structures begin to fail or crumble or dissolve, then we're left in a place of asking that ultimate question, who am I really? And, getting back to the trauma aspect, meanwhile, the parts of ourselves that we've identified with, we've disconnected and disassociated from our true nature. And often we abandon parts of ourselves because of wounds and traumatic experiences whenever they occur, that now need to be seen and validated, loved and heard, and yes, coming back into that wholeness. So, and there's so many reasons why we do this, why we disown parts of ourselves that we deem not to be worthy, or abandon them because of shame or guilt, or maybe we've just misinterpreted events and situations that we keep recycling in our conditioned mind. And that's why it's just so important to become aware of those parts of ourselves without judgment, and to bring them back into our holiness or wholeness. So yeah, our journey back home is our journey back to wholeness, to oneness with all, with our true self, beyond the identity, and back to this unity of self and consciousness. So it's no wonder that so many of us feel lost, fearful, anxious, depressed when we're living from this fragmented self, this separation, this division that we have within us, which then gets perpetuated and expressed or reflected back to us by what I said at the beginning of this episode, all the drama that is playing out on the global stage. So we can truly be our own worst enemies. And I would ask you, this suffering, this pain that you perhaps are attracted to or see in the world, maybe it is just a creation of your own mental construct. Not to say that this is not playing out there, but it's the way you interpret it. And if you can transcend beyond that and come from a place of unity and wholeness and love and respect and compassion and healing, then that's your point of reference, and that's the way you'll view these events. And rather than perpetuate the ongoing recycling of trauma, you can view it through different eyes. But I guess that can only happen when you heal those aspects of yourself and embody them. And then you can view the world through that lens rather than through the lens of trauma or pain or suffering. So it truly is the inner work, which I've said so many times is the most important work that you can ever do. But ultimately, when you realize or do a deeper dive into your inner realms of wounding and those parts of you that you feel like are not lovable or that cause pain ultimately are there to serve you as what's ultimately a part of your soul's evolution. And I do believe that on that level in our human experience, it is there for us to evolve, not just as individuals, but also as a species and as a humanity. And that's why the journey back to home, to self, to the heart, is just such an important thing you can do for yourself. And, if you believe in karmic soul lessons for your own karma, so that experience doesn't rule you and doesn't, you no longer become a prisoner of your past experience, that you can evolve and transcend beyond that into different evolutions of yourself. So, coming back into holiness, that's basically coming back to self and coming back to your own love and connection to your divine nature, to know that you're not separate from the universe, that, as I've said before, you are the field and also the knower of the field. So I hope that has helped to expand and maybe inspire you to take a deeper look into your own inner wounding and trauma, to investigate further all that drama and conflict and pain that we see, that we seem to view in this reality, that maybe we can turn that lens on ourselves and become better versions of ourselves and show the same compassion and love and understanding and kindness, not only to, the people that are going through hardship or pain or suffering, but also to come from a place of offering that to yourself first and foremost. And then you can, that old saying is that you can't pour from an empty cup. Then maybe you can better navigate and you can better journey through this ever-changing reality and evolution that we're facing at this pivotal time in our own humanity. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to Reality Bites, and we'll catch you on the next one.